Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Everyone, hello, Maverick family. Will there be another election here in Canada? Could be one just around the corner. We'll tell you why. Will Ukraine get new fighter jets? Looks like it. Well, where will they come from? We'll tell you. And I might have some thoughts on last night's conversation that I had with Phil about the Universal Ostrich Farm, combined maybe with some of what has happened over there today. Not sure. I'm going to try to avoid it, but inevitably, I think we might end up back over there. But we have a lot of other stuff to unpack tonight, so don't go away, because we're in for one heck of a ride tonight here on Maverick News as we dig into today's top news stories. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are Maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We will start in Canada tonight, where we are not, just days away from a new budget finally being introduced by the semi-new Liberal government. New in the sense that we have Mark Carney at the helm as Prime Minister. Not quite so new, because a lot of the same faces are still there that were there before, during the Trudeau era, Trudeau 2.0. But it's a big one. It's a big event because of the tariff war, because of Canada being so far in debt, and the budget looks like it's going to balloon beyond projections for the deficit that this budget is likely to bring in. The government poised to spend huge amounts of money, I think, to keep the economy functioning and liquid in the face of this trade war with the United States, Donald Trump. Now, everyone is on pins and needles in Ottawa, because if a budget, anytime a budget is tabled in Canada, the way that our system works, a budget is always a vote that can result in, it's a confidence vote. If a budget is not passed in the House after it is introduced, if it is defeated, it can trigger an election, because it becomes an issue of confidence. If a government can't get a budget passed, that signals that they really don't have the confidence of the House of Commons, the House of the people, and the sitting representatives of the people, the members of Parliament. If you don't have enough, you don't get it passed. Now, because the Liberals are, just a little shy of a majority, they're still in a minority government position. That gives a lot of power to the opposition parties. It looks like the Bloc Québécois will not support it. They were saying they wouldn't support it even before they've seen it or heard it. So they're just out to lunch, or, well, I wouldn't say out to lunch, but they're just out of the picture in terms of, I guess, supporting the budget. They're just going to vote against it. So you can take all those votes off the table. Then the Conservatives, that might be a different matter. It isn't really clear where the Conservative Party will stand on this. Today, the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, met with Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, to just have a private conversation about the budget. We don't know exactly what was said, but I've got two clips heading into this. One, Mark Carney going into the meeting, and then we have a different clip of Poilievre coming out. So here's Carney going in.
What are you hoping? Myself. No, I understand.
Giving a pre-budget speech tonight.
That was it. Okay, so there's going to be a pre-budget speech, right? So that's what we're getting from the Prime Minister, I guess, tonight. And then this was Poilievre coming out of the meeting.
Do you hear anything to change your mind?
Well, we had a good conversation. My message, of course, to the Prime Minister is that people can't afford to pay anymore, that they're tapped out, their grocery bills, the rent is too high after 10 years of excess spending. So I shared my view that we need the government to bring down its inflationary deficits and taxes. I was grateful for the chance to sit down with the Prime Minister. We had a good conversation. He didn't make any commitments. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with.
You said you hoped he was in listening mode. Did you feel that was the case?
I think we both were. We had a good back and forth, and we shared our respective views. I'm not going to report to you anything that he said because that was in the four walls of the room. I can only speak for myself, and I reiterated that we need this to be an affordable budget. We've seen over the last 10 years of Liberal deficit spending is driven up the cost of living and driven down investment in our country. So my message is it's time to reverse course on the costly decade of deficit spending that has given us more expensive food and housing. The Canadian people deserve a break. The cost of government is driving up the cost of living. And so if the Prime Minister is serious about making Canada a more affordable country, then he needs to bring forward an affordable budget.
Do you get the sense
Over,
this is a
like
budget
over
that you can
history.
support?
Sorry, go ahead.
We can take both.
Okay,
Yeah.
you go first.
Do you get the sense that this is a budget you could support?
I haven't seen anything. So, but I've sort of laid out my conditions for the party, and we'll see what he comes up with.
I mean, history, though, is that opposition parties, official opposition parties, do not support the budget. I mean, you just don't. It's not part of your job. So, do you know what I mean? Do you see a world in which this is possible for you?
The world would be it's an affordable budget that gets rid of taxes, excess taxes on investment, home building, work, energy, that brings the deficit down to the level that the Liberals promised only a year ago. Pretty reasonable to go back to the deficit they were running only a year ago. These are the things that he would have to do for us to consider it. At the end of the day, our number one priority is people's take-home pay has to grow, and that comes through more affordable food and homes. The current Liberal policy is driving up the cost of living. If they sharply reverse that, then they can bring down the cost of living. And that's what I asked for with this meeting with the Prime Minister.
Just I'm just curious, after meeting with them, what are your impressions as far as where the deficit might go?
I didn't press him too hard, but the spending has been out of control since he took office. And in a lot of ways, he's spending faster and more than the Liberal government was when he became Prime Minister. Spending on the bureaucracy is up 6%, on consultants is up 37%. It seems like he's got a new agency for every problem in Canada, It's going to be an alphabet soup of different acronyms around this city. And so my sense is that his spending, Mr. Carney's spending, with great respect, is totally out of control. And Canadians are paying the price for his out of control spending.
When you say,
So why not press him a little bit further on it?
Well, I didn't expect I would get an answer to that question in this meeting. And if I did, I'm not going to repeat things he said to me in private anyway.
there seems to be like a shift in the narrative where it used to be the job of the government was, in a minority situation, was to convince the opposition to support the budget. And instead it's become, it is the opposition's fault if you don't support the budget. And I just wonder if you could reflect on that tension, like this idea that if Canadians truly do expect, in a minority situation, everybody to work together, then where is it with all your parties to sort of sit down and hammer this out, or who owns that ultimately?
I think it'll be up to the Canadian people to judge when they see the substance and measure it against the votes. But what I've tried to do is be fair-minded and just holding him to the promises that he made. You know, it was a year ago the Liberals promised this year's deficit would only be $42 billion. So I don't think it's that unreasonable to expect that they would keep that cap. He said he would be judged by the prices at the grocery store. Well, those prices are rising at 4% now, twice the Bank of Canada's target rate. My goal is to bring that food price inflation down. He said that he would make he would create jobs. So we're putting forward policies that would actually do that. So I think we've been very reasonable in basically insisting that the Prime Minister live up to the very big promises that he made of himself. And for me, the biggest and most important promise of it all is that people can actually start to afford their lives again.
Do you get the sense he wants an election out of this?
We didn't discuss that, but all right. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
All right. So what we have in our hands here is a pre-budget speech that will be delivered tonight. The budget itself will be delivered next month, but we are now about, in theory, about 14 minutes away from the pre-budget speech in Ottawa with Prime Minister Mark Carney. So we will be picking that up. I believe we have a pool feed established, so I will keep my eye on that one eye, as we continue to wade through today's other top news stories. Perhaps the thing that got my attention, I just lost my tab, in a most pronounced way tonight, was this from Putin. Nuclear drills. Right here. Putin has carried out a scheduled exercise with strategic nuclear forces, overseeing these drills directly, or this drill. And I would say it's scheduled, yes, but carefully timed. It's, I don't think, any coincidence that this is happening right now. Let me just bring up a little bit of video here to go with this. So he's directly involved in this, and I would say that there is clearly some theatrics involved here. Here we go. So he's in his, I don't know what you call this on the Kremlin side. Is this like his personal situation room or whatever it is? I've seen this room many times. He's monitoring, overseeing
Добрый день, уважаемые товарищи.
The drill.
Сегодня у нас
And this, of course, coming
хочу это подчеркнуть, плановая тренировка
a day after
по
the
управлению ядерными силами, как только что доложил министр.
Ukraine peace talks that were
Давайте начнем работать. Пожалуйста,
supposed to take
слово
place in Budapest
начальнику
were,
генерального
it depends on who
штаба.
you talk to, postponed or outright canceled. I would say outright canceled after Putin rejected Trump's proposal for a ceasefire along the existing battle lines. So nuclear saber rattling again from Vladimir Putin. He has done this multiple times. This is where I really get concerned. I don't like that kind of talk. And it's Russia that has done this repeatedly all through this conflict with Ukraine, where Putin keeps going to the nuclear option, sort of throwing that out there like we will use it. It is, I think, a reflection or an indication that Russia as a conventional military force is not the superpower that, say, the United States is, that it is not as powerful in a conventional sense as many people believe it is. That is why they're having, I think, so much difficulty in Ukraine achieving the goals that were set. Initially saying we're going to take what we want in like a week, and here we are almost 4 years later. However, they do still have nuclear weapons, and this was addressed on this program back during the beginning of the conflict, because of course, if Russia is pushed into a corner because they don't have the conventional forces, say that they need to counteract any kind of attack by NATO forces, especially on Russian territory, I think that they are the ones most likely to get backed into a scenario where they would resort to a possible nuclear option, if that ever were to come to pass. So this is sending that signal tonight in a scary way, because this brings us another step closer potentially to World War III in a kinetic way. We're already in a third world war in a way that no one has ever seen before. Fifth generation warfare, information warfare, skirmishes are here, and pipelines blown up over there, infrastructure attacked over here, boarding of vessels over there, shadow fleets carrying oil from Russia to other countries to keep the economy in Russia going. It's not a conventional kind of war, but either would a nuclear war be conventional either. And we see tactical nukes lined up along the Ukraine, in the area of Ukraine by Russia. This has been the case for some time. They've had multiple drills. We're aware of this. So we're inching closer and closer to a real catastrophe. And I hope that we never get there. But that's where we are at tonight. Now, Trump today saying that he never gave permission to Ukraine to fire missiles into Russia. And that is what has been happening. But, Ukraine doesn't really need permission, and they are within the rules of law and the rules of war to do exactly that, because their territory was attacked. So they are entirely on solid ground legally in terms of international law to do exactly that, where they've been attacking Russian infrastructure and oil production. And that's put a big dent into the economy.
No, it said that I gave Ukraine permission to shoot missiles deep into Russia. I didn't do that. Second of all, they're not using our missiles. They're using, I think, European missiles or from someplace.
So
but
they
they're
made
not
themselves.
using ours. And what they do, I don't control that. But I do control our missiles.
Right.
They're not shooting our missiles. And it was a fake story. Wall Street Journal does a lot of fake stories.
Yeah, so not U.S. missiles. That's the point that he's making, because, of course, he doesn't want to have the United States entangled in a more complicated way, in a more direct way with Russia. He's afraid of that, clearly. Also tonight, he's saying that those Tomahawk missiles that they've been talking about and that he discussed with Zelensky when Zelensky visited, he's saying, no, too complicated for Ukraine, whatever the hell that means.
Well, the problem with the Tomahawk that a lot of people don't know, it'll take a minimum of 6 months, usually a year, to learn how to use them. They're highly complex. So the only way a Tomahawk is going to be shot is if we shot it, and we're not going to do that. But there is a tremendous learning curve with the Tomahawk. It's a very powerful weapon, very accurate weapon, and maybe that's what makes it so complex. But it will take a year. It takes a year of intense training to learn how to use it. and we know how to use it, and we're not going to be teaching other people. It's too far out into the future.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, though, when I've listened to some analysts in recent days on the political side, some people are saying the reason Russia wanted to go to Budapest to talk peace was because the Tomahawks were on the table. Then Putin had that conversation, the phone call with Trump. Then something changed and he pivoted back away from that. Now we're getting this rhetoric where he's saying too complicated, can't send them. And now the meeting in Budapest called off. On the Ukrainian side, they're saying that it is the only way you're going to get to peace negotiations with Russia is if you back up your stance, your position with the ability to defend yourself, to bring force to the equation. And I think there is some merit in that argument. Now, that being said, I think also what is happening, and it's becoming increasingly clear, is that the United States, because of the Trump position on Ukraine, the United States is becoming increasingly less relevant, not just to Ukraine, but in terms of geopolitical politics, as well as Trump pulls inward everything, and there is less influence of the United States around the world. Today, that being showcased in a very pronounced way as Zelensky goes to Sweden, where we saw, well, actually, here I have video to go with this too. This is what Zelensky was watching in Sweden. This is the Gripen, the jet that Canada is also looking at as a possible alternative to the F-35 fighter jet contract that we are currently reviewing with the United States. So here's what Zelensky was looking at today. Less expensive than the F-35. Also very versatile. You can land this thing on a road. Also easier to maintain, from what I understand, although the F-35 is supposed to be more sophisticated. If this were to be purchased by Canada, they would assemble it, build it here in Canada, which could replace some auto jobs if it comes to that.
And then suddenly, when the Second World War happened, we
there he is.
So we had the fifth biggest.
Canadian side, of course, this would replace the CF-18s. They're getting pretty long in the tooth.
Going through the whole aircraft, and so there's so much thrust, so you barely can hold it with your brakes. No, well, it is. Right? That's the point. Yeah. No, it's of course this is display, right? So it's going to be all out in the corners, and it's an amazing feeling. And that's just flying it. Then we have the whole combat part of it, which we'll get to later.
and that is that I believe that.
And here's the let's make a deal portion.
What's good for you, so that it is, since we have a and I would say that that is perhaps one of our plans, your wish as well, but then it's good to try to be a little bit.
So what was the result? Well, I can tell you. A letter of intent to purchase. And this is major. This is a major deal because we are talking. Here is this. Huge Gripen fighter rotor, letter of intent signed by Ukraine. Unveiled a plan to deliver up to 150 Gripen E fighters to Ukraine, but still not quite a done deal. A lot of details to work out, not to mention, how are you going to pay for all this? So here, from TWZ, the long-running saga of Saab Gripen fighters for Ukraine took a dramatic new turn today with the Swedish and Ukrainian leaders unveiling a plan to export as many as 150 Gripens to Kyiv. While no timeline has been set and the financing is yet to be determined, the deal, if it goes ahead, would provide Ukraine with its first new built fighter jets since it gained independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky today signed a letter of intent with the aim of deepening Air Force cooperation. The cornerstone of this is a potential major export deal covering likely between 100 and 150 fighter jets. The letter of intent was signed in front of a Gripen E, where they build the fighter jet at the manufacturing facility there in Sweden. So less influence from the US, more from Europe. And such is the state of affairs today with the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I am going to take a little break, check in and see if we have that feed starting at the House of Commons tonight. Stay with me. I shall return.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M.
Okay, let's just pick it up live now. Here we go.
During times of immense change. Okay. And I've learned a few things since I graduated, and I've increasingly understood this point that, life doesn't proceed in a straight line. And that the history and the progress of nations are punctuated by hinge moments. Times when the future literally hangs in the balance and when our actions can be decisive. Et dans des moments comme celui-ci, nous devons être audacieux. Il faut tracer une nouvelle voie. Et il faut le faire ensemble. Le Canada traverse un moment comme celui-là aujourd'hui. Les changements technologiques s'accélèrent. The world is more dangerous and divided. The U.S., as we all know, has fundamentally changed its approach to trade. It's raising its tariffs to levels last seen during the Great Depression. And the scale and the speed of these developments are not part of a smooth transition, they're a rupture. And they mean that our economic strategy needs to change dramatically. And they mean as well, even though we both lived through time, or I lived through times of immense change, your future will not be the same as my past. because my time as a student was marked by events of a similar magnitude, but in a very different direction. When I was your age, the Berlin Wall fell, leading to a long period of liberalization of the movement of goods, capital, and people, leading to a peace dividend. C'était une époque d'optimisme, d'espoir et de promesses. Et ces dynamiques favorisaient particulièrement le Canada. Notre géographie enviable nous donnait l'accès à la plus vaste et à la plus dynamique des économies et nous tenait à distance de la plupart des guerres et des attentats terroristes qui ont eu lieu. So, because of these advantages, over decades our economy grew steadily more integrated with the United States through the Free Trade Agreement of the 1980s, the NAFTA Accord of the 1990s, and eventually USMCA agreement signed in 2018. Canada's trade increased by over 400% during that period, and our economy doubled in size. But this process, this decades-long process of an ever closer economic relationship with the United States, is now over. And as a consequence, many of our former strengths as a country, former strengths more particularly as our economy, strengths based on close ties to America, have become our vulnerabilities. And as a result of that, the jobs of workers in our industries most affected by the US tariffs in autos and steel and lumber are under threat. And our businesses are holding back investments restrained by the pall of uncertainty that's hanging over all of us. Our relationship with the United States will never again be the same as it was, even though in this new world of protectionism, we have the best trade deal of any other country, and we're working to make it even better still. Now, at the same time that all of this is happening, technology is changing the way we work, live, and communicate. When I was in graduate school, the World Wide Web, as we then called it, was that was the modern term of the information superhighway, if you ever heard of that. The World Wide Web, as we then called it, was just beginning. We used pen and paper in class. We talked on the telephone to each other. And we talked about the same news stories, the same movies, the same bands. My generation was connected by wires, yours is connected by code, and yet our society today is becoming ever more disconnected. Our public square is fragmented by online echo chambers, where truth and fiction can be hard to tell apart, and where contrasting ideas tend to polarize, not persuade. Now, in the context of all this, as Canadians, we have relearned some key lessons over the course of the past year. First, we have to take care of ourselves because we can't rely on one foreign partner. We have to take care of each other because we are stronger together. And we've learned that now is not the time to be cautious because fortune favors the bold. Nous pouvons nous donner beaucoup plus que d'autres ne pourront jamais nous prendre. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous. Ce sont les Canadiens qui décideront de ce qui se passe ici. It's our country. It's your future. And we are going to give it back to you. Now, to confront a more dynamic, a more competitive, a more hostile world, we must chart a new course, drawing on our many strengths as a country, relying on our values, and being inspired by our history. First, on strengths, Canada has what the world wants. Nous sommes bordés par 3 océans, et nous sommes le seul pays à avoir des accords commerciaux avec chacune des économies du G7. Offrant à nos entreprises un accès inégalé aux marchés mondiaux. We're an energy superpower. We start with the third largest reserves of oil, the fourth largest of natural gas. We have an electricity grid that is 85% clean, and we have the vast potential to power the clean economy of the future. We possess one of the largest resources of critical minerals and rare earths. Le Canada est un chef de file en intelligence artificielle, dans les sciences de la vie et en informatique quantique. Nos universités figurent parmi les meilleures au monde. Merci, Madame. Les scientifiques sont parmi les plus cités et elles attirent et forment les meilleurs talents, vous. Our government has the fiscal capacity to act decisively, and we must draw on these strengths now. Our second advantage is that Canada has the values to which the world aspires. Canada has always been, and we always will be, committed to fundamental human rights, to human dignity, and to individual freedom. We are a pluralistic society. Our cities are the most diverse in the world, places where people bring the best of their cultures. We have a public square that's loud, that's diverse and free. Et les Canadiens et Canadiennes valorisent la collaboration et le partenariat. Et nous sommes résolus à bâtir un avenir durable. Ces valeurs profondes sont aussi des atouts économiques. Elles donnent aux investisseurs la confiance pour bâtir ici. Elles offrent aux innovateurs des bases stables pour prendre des risques ici. Elles donnent au monde des raisons de faire confiance aux Canadiens comme partenaires fiables. L'histoire du Canada est remplie d'aventuriers, de preneurs de risques et de bâtisseurs. Au fil des siècles, pour réussir et prospérer, nous avons dû aller plus loin, construire plus vite et rêver plus grand. Il est important de se rappeler que le Canada d'avant la Confédération, c'était une époque d'audace et de prise de risque. Long before Confederation, our country was forged by Indigenous peoples. Coureurs de bois and voyageurs who mapped this continent and built vast trading networks from coast to coast to coast before the Americans had even left St. Louis. When the Second World War ended, Canada was ambitious, determined, and united in a mission to build big things. The St. Lawrence Seaway, the Trans-Canada Highway, Expo 67, the CN Tower. Nous avons construit de nouveaux quartiers pour des centaines de milliers de vétérans et de leurs familles, et ouvert de nouvelles universités pour lancer leur carrière. On avait le sentiment d'avoir la main sur notre avenir. We used to build things in this country. We can build again. We used to explore this country. We can chart new courses again. We used to take big, bold risks in this country. It is time to swing for the fences again. We learned a little lesson about swinging for the fences a couple nights ago, as I recall. And this is what the upcoming budget will be about: building, taking control, and winning. We will make generational investments with a plan to protect our communities, our borders, our way of life. We will build a stronger economy where everyone has a chance to get ahead. And we will empower Canadians with new opportunities, better careers, and a lower cost of living. Now, let me start with protection, because to build more of what we need, we must protect what we have. Safe communities attract people and families to put down roots, get a home, build a rewarding career, and ensure their children get a good education. So as soon as Parliament opened in the spring, we introduced the strongest legislation in Canadian history to secure our borders and crack down on gun trafficking and illegal drugs such as fentanyl. We introduced new legislation to combat the horrifying rise in hate and violent intimidation, including to protect against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And as I shared last week, we will table legislation for stricter bail and sentencing laws. To help secure our communities, we're hiring 1,000 new RCMP personnel, and to secure our borders, we're hiring 1,000 new border services officers. As we build safer streets and stronger borders, we also must reinforce our sovereignty in that more dangerous and divided world. And that's why Canada's new government is undertaking the largest increase in defence spending in a generation, or in generations to be more precise. And we're forging new partnerships with allies, such as the European Union, to strengthen our shared security. Parce que vous méritez un foyer sûr. Parce que vous méritez de vous sentir en sécurité. Parce que nous défendrons la souveraineté du Canada. Et parce qu'il n'y a pas de prospérité sans sécurité. But look, protection is not enough. We have to build, and our plan to build, first and foremost, is here at home so we can take control of our future and, as I said, give you back yours. In the last 6 months, we've worked to create the right conditions to get big things built faster. At the end of June, we passed the One Canadian Economy Act to remove federal barriers to internal trade and to fast-track the approval of nation-building projects. In August, we opened the Major Projects Office, which serves as a single point of contact to get those nation-building projects built faster. Des projets qui vont connecter, vont diversifier, et vont pousser. Des projets qui vont exporter vers de nouveaux partenaires partout dans le monde. Des projets qui vont créer des centaines de milliers d'emplois bien rémunérés, de bons emplois syndiqués pour les travailleurs canadiens. Now, last month, we announced the first tranche, the first group of these major projects, with over $60 billion of investments in nuclear power, in LNG, in carbon capture, in critical minerals, and in new trade corridors. And we outlined strategies from offshore wind to high-speed rail and a sovereign cloud to drive hundreds of billions in further investment, all while creating the conditions for a better connected, more productive, and more ambitious country. And the thing is, we are just getting started. Our next tranche of nation-building projects will be announced by the Grey Cup, after the World Series, but by the Grey Cup. Yeah. And at the core of our strategy will be to catalyze unprecedented investments in Canada over the next 5 years. That's what's going to come above and beyond these projects. Parce que nous nous concentrons aussi sur la construction de millions de nouveaux logements qui vont renforcer nos communautés. Construire plus vite avec des technologies canadiennes, des travailleurs canadiens, du bois canadien et de l'acier canadien. Construire des logements que les Canadiens peuvent réellement se permettre. We launched Build Canada Homes here in Ottawa to help double the pace of housing construction within a decade using new factory technology, cutting building times by 50%, reducing costs by 20%, and lowering emissions by 20%. Now, it's not just what we build, it's also how we build. We will build inclusively in full partnership with Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis every step of the way. We will build in solidarity with workers, creating good union jobs. And Budget 2025 will introduce our climate competitiveness strategy. With a focus on results over objectives, on investments over prohibition, we will build sustainably. Le budget va contenir une nouvelle stratégie pour bâtir de façon durable et compétitive pour l'avenir du Canada. On va se concentrer sur les résultats plutôt que sur les objectifs, sur les investissements plutôt que les interdictions. Nous bâtirons de façon durable en misant sur l'énergie, le transport, le logement et la fabrication à faible émission pour renforcer notre compétitivité, parce que réduire les émissions n'est pas seulement un devoir moral, c'est aussi un impératif économique. Our strategy will recognize that in today's global economy, we have to build sustainably. It's not just a moral duty, it's also an economic imperative. It is a moral duty, but it's an economic imperative. Now, above all, we will build Canadian. The new security threats the world is bringing to our shores means we're making the biggest investments in our military in generations. But up until now, more than 70 cents of every dollar of military spending, military capital expending by our government goes to the United States. With our new Defense Investment Agency, we will make sure we build more of our security and defense capabilities here at home, creating new careers in aerospace and shipbuilding and cyber and AI for Canadian engineers, technicians, and scientists. It's the same thing in steel. Consider that while 80% of the steel that Europe buys is manufactured in Europe, 75% of the steel that the U.S. buys is manufactured in the U.S. Only 40% of the steel that we use is made here. That doesn't make sense. Not when we have the people, the resources, and the companies to build right here in Canada. So our upcoming budget will move forward with our Buy Canadian policy, prioritizing Canadian steel, aluminum, lumber, manufactured good, and technology for Canadian projects. And with new orders for homes, infrastructure, and defense equipment becoming orders for Canadian suppliers. We will be our own best customer. So the welder who's working on a contract in St. John's can get a full-time job. Et pour qu'un ingénieur de l'Université d'Ottawa ait une carrière de grande qualité qui l'attendent ici au Canada. Now, our partners around the world are already taking note of new Canadian ambition. Last month, we signed a historic free trade deal with Indonesia, the world's fourth largest country by population. We've just signed foundational agreements with the United Arab Emirates in AI and with the EU in defense and trade and with Germany in critical minerals. We're re-engaging with global giants India and China while we deepen our partnerships with our traditional allies. And to build on this momentum, I'm going to put it in context. Our goal for Canada is to double our non-US exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion more in trade, and that's new orders for Canadian resources, technologies, and expertise. Now, you spoke of protection and building, you move to empowering. Each of you in this room and in the overflow room, each of you is here to get an education that you need to go out and build the future that you want. To be empowered with a better shot at the life you want for yourself and your family. We will keep building a country where more people have more of those opportunities. Nous continuerons de soutenir les plus vulnérables, d'offrir un répit à ceux qui ont du mal à s'en sortir en bâtissant un pays où la vie est abordable. C'est le troisième objectif de notre plan, donner à tous les Canadiens et Canadiennes les moyens de réussir. So, we start by lowering costs with programs and services that provide strong foundations for a good life. So the first thing that we did, the absolute first thing we did after the election was to cut taxes for all Canadians who pay tax, delivering tax savings for more than 22 million Canadians. We cut taxes to reduce the cost of housing for first-time homebuyers, some of whom I hope are in this room, immediately making the goal of home ownership a reality for more Canadians with young families. All of the big projects that we're driving forward, from new housing and new ports and clean energy, will create high-paying careers, many of them union careers here in Canada. It will be a great time to be in the trades. But as well, in the budget, we will unlock new apprenticeships, new skills training programs, and a new talent strategy for the next generation of scientists and innovators who will build our country. And as we build new industries and create new markets, you will be equipped with the skills you need to succeed with those opportunities. Because when Canadians empower each other, everyone benefits, and Canada prospers. Pour saisir ce moment. Vas-y. Pour saisir ce moment charnière, nous devrons prendre des décisions difficiles. Nous devrons transformer la façon dont l'État fonctionne. Dépenser moins pour que les Canadiens investissent davantage, bâtissent notre pays et créent de meilleures carrières. The upcoming budget will balance the operating deficit in 3 years by reducing wasteful government spending and doing more with less. So the fact is that federal spending has been growing over the course of the last decade by more than 7% year over year. We've been spending faster than our economy was growing. So we have to change that, and our government is changing that. As one example, we just completed a 60-day red tape review that identified nearly 500 new ways to streamline government services, cut duplication, and reduce costs. And when we saw that Canada Post was losing $10 million a day, Madam President, would you like to have $10 million a day? Imagine what you could do for the university with $10 million a day. Canada Post losing $10 million a day. We made responsible choices. But the fact is, even with such efficiencies and with better management, we will have to do less of some of the things that we want to do so we can do more of what we must do to build a bigger and better Canada. Ce budget va protéger les programmes essentiels qui donnent à chaque Canadien une vraie chance d'avancer. On va protéger le régime canadien de soins dentaires qui permettent enfin à plus de 5 millions de Canadiens d'avoir accès à des soins dentaires abordables. Et on va rendre permanent le programme national d'alimentation scolaire, qui aide 400 000 enfants à recevoir chaque jour des repas sains. We will protect the National Child Care Program for the over 900,000 children who are getting a strong start that they deserve, and for their parents who no longer have to choose between raising a family and keeping their careers. And as well, our budget will also bring in automatic federal benefits so that the millions of low-income Canadians who aren't part of the system can get the support that they need. Now, we need to be clear-eyed about where we stand today so we can build for tomorrow. Let me give the current economic context. I'm channeling my old central banker days here. Look, the situation in Canada now, the actual situation, is that the rate of inflation has come down. It's come down sharply. But it's also the case that the cost of living is still far too high. It's also the situation in Canada right now that we're building a lot more homes. Housing starts are up this year. And affordability of those houses are improving. But it's still challenging. We need to build many, many more homes, and we need to build them a lot faster. This government is getting immigration under control, with asylum claims down by 1/3 and new temporary foreign workers down by more than 70% this year. To match immigration levels with our needs and our capacity to welcome them, this budget will include Canada's new immigration plan to do better for newcomers and for everyone. It's also the fact that in this economy, We are creating jobs as a whole across it. And it is a fact that we are forecast to be the second fastest growing economy in the G7 over the course of the next 2 years. Even though some critical sectors, I mentioned earlier, autos, steel, lumber, forest products, aluminum, and some regions are facing big pressures. So the facts are that at present, despite everything, despite these big changes, our economy is holding up. But it's equally true that if we don't act now, these pressures will only grow. And more fundamentally, our goal is not just to do reasonably well, but to grow stronger than the rest of the G7. And as we work to do so, I want to make this promise to Canadians. I will always be straight about the challenges that we face and the choices that we must make. And to be clear, we won't transform our economy easily or in a few months. It will take some sacrifices, and it will take some time. Our government will work relentlessly to cut waste and drive efficiencies. And when we have to make difficult choices, we will be thoughtful, we'll be transparent, and we'll be fair. We will work collaboratively with our colleagues across the aisle to build, protect, and empower Canadians. We won't play games. We won't waste time. And we won't hold back. We will do what it takes. We will play to win. We will bet on Canada and all Canadians. Je fais cette promesse aux Canadiens. Je serai toujours franc au sujet des défis que nous devons affronter et des choix que nous devrons faire. Nous n'allons pas transformer notre économie facilement ni en quelques mois. Cela exigera certains sacrifices et cela prendra du temps. Notre gouvernement travaillera sans relâche pour éliminer le gaspillage et améliorer l'efficacité. Et lorsque nous devrons faire des choix difficiles, nous le ferons avec réflexion et transparence. Nous travaillerons en collaboration avec nos collègues de tous les partis pour bâtir, protéger et donner plus de pouvoir aux Canadiens. Nous ne jouerons pas de jeu et nous ne perdrons pas de temps. Nous ne retiendrons pas. Nous ferons tout ce qu'il faut. Nous jouerons pour gagner. Nous miserons sur le Canada et sur tous les Canadiens. C'est notre pays, c'est votre avenir. Nous allons vous en donner le contrôle. And to finish, because we're all in this together, I ask you to get involved. The fact you're here this evening, we do many other things, shows that you're interested in being involved. Get involved. Look out for each other. Look after each other. I know from the history that I read in university and the history that I've lived since graduating that fortune truly does favor the bold. And the hinge of fate will turn on what Canada does right now. We're going to have to change how we do some things. But we will never change who we are. This moment has revealed, yes, the limits to our economic independence. Limits that we must tackle head on, and we will. But more importantly, what it's revealed is a nation that's more determined, generous, hardworking, compassionate, and ambitious than any other on earth. We are Canada strong. Canada fort. Vive le Canada. Thank you.
Okay, and that's the way it ends, or begins. Mark Carney delivering, I think, a very effective speech. Words, we'll see what we get in terms of action And in terms of detail, November 4th, when the budget is tabled in the House of Commons, and we'll have to see if the budget passes. So he's promising just a few little nuggets to tease us. He's promising to balance the budget in 3 years. And this budget coming up would be a first step toward that, I guess, citing over 500 new ways, he says, to cut costs, make the government more efficient, eliminate wasteful spending, and points to what has been happening with Canada Post, the Crown Corporation losing $10 million a day, and they've been trying to address that, certainly through the labor talks. And I found it also interesting that he addressed the issue of temporary foreign workers, which has been one that has been front and center and going viral on social media, saying that in the past year, temporary foreign workers, the numbers down, according to him, 70% on social media. Certainly that doesn't seem to be the story that is being told. I don't know where the truth lies, maybe somewhere in the middle. Hard to know until you get confirmed stats. But that, with regard to this year, I think will come later from Statistics Canada and other figures that will be revealed through data still being compiled. So I don't know if that's even true. I don't know. A lot of people saying, Rick, have you been to Tim Hortons or McDonald's lately? Have you looked at what kind of people are working? I was at McDonald's today. I met somebody down there, and it wasn't the way people are portraying it to me, not the one I went to, although they got my order wrong. That's twice now, so I wasn't too happy about that. It was a minor thing. I just had to go back and ask for a correction. Minor irritant when people have much more important things in life to worry about than that. It all worked out in the end. I got what I needed or wanted. There is a difference. So yeah, I guess we'll wait now for November 4th, but between now and then, there will be a lot of discussion about this, a lot of debate, a lot of mudslinging, I would say, even, and fear mongering, and maybe attempts to gloss over some of the real serious problems and challenges facing Canada and our economy. The auto industry, certainly in the sights of the United States, real concerns about whether the assembly portion of the auto industry can even survive this direct assault, an attempt to really steal the auto industry from Canadians entirely by Donald J. Trump, at least the assembly facilities. But as I pointed out just in the last few days, the Brampton assembly plant, which is run by Stellantis, that they're saying they're going to put another product in there. I think they've been looking at making changes at that plant for some time anyway. So what's unfolding there, maybe just the timing, coincidental, and maybe opportunistic on the part of Stellantis, using it as a reason to proceed with some of the plans that they've had anyway. And Stellantis, not in the best of shape when compared to other auto companies, and in particular, the Chrysler brand, not in the best of shape. They've been looking at maybe spinning that brand off or selling it to another auto company. China actually being one of potential buyers, Chinese companies looking at buying Chrysler from Stellantis, an auto company that owns a lot of different brands. So Chrysler has gone through a lot of different stages, a lot of different phases and ownership structures over the years, from its earliest beginnings at swallowing up AMC and then later becoming part of Mercedes-Benz, being swallowed up by them. And I remember Lee Iacocca saying it should have been the other way around. Chrysler should have taken over Mercedes-Benz, and he may well have been right, because now we see that Chrysler really, not much to offer in terms of auto companies, only a few actual products out there. Jeep kind of spun off into a different brand altogether under the Stellantis envelope. Ram truck, now not really Chrysler. It's all Chrysler products, but brand divisions and dividing the company up. And if they do sell off Chrysler, I don't know where that would ultimately leave Canada, which is a country that has benefited immensely from First American Motors and Chrysler, and then just Chrysler taking over all that. Jeep. We'll see. Very, very challenging, scary, unstable times. Let's take a little break. We have other news to dip into when we come back. Don't go away.
Maverick News. Expose lies and tell truth. The world is watching.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on. It's hard to keep up with all the different news stories, even though we're trying to be a news operation in our own way here. But this is a story that sort of slipped through the cracks yesterday. Department of National Defense in Canada canceling a contract with a Canadian company to refurbish armored vehicles that were to be delivered to Ukraine. The federal defense minister isn't saying why, though. Yesterday, the story emerged. I did not really become aware of it, though, but this is a story that has been happening sort of quietly, sort of almost behind the scenes. But there was a couple of little reports out there yesterday. So just becoming aware of it now, just bringing it to your attention. David McGuinty, the defense minister, asked about about this in the House of Commons yesterday, but just kind of holding it all close to his chest, not really revealing the exact reasons why. The contract was with a company called Armatech Survivability in Dorchester, Ontario, not far from here, just outside London. It was a contract for 25 light armored vehicles. They were going to be refurbished by this company, and none of those vehicles, though, so far delivered to Ukraine. And the contract has been either paused or canceled, not really quite sure. So we will need to wait. Keep another eye open on that one and see where that goes. And the killing spree off the coast of Venezuela continues. And not even just off the coast of Venezuela, now kind of moving further abroad as well. We're seeing tonight, and this reported earlier, that, here's the guy who loves to call himself the Secretary of War, Pistol Pete Hegseth. He says that At the direction of President Trump, the Department of War conducted a lethal kinetic strike on yet another vessel being operated by a designated terrorist organization and conducting narco trafficking in the Eastern Pacific. He goes on with his post on social media. I'll bring it up here. It says the vessel was known by our intelligence to be involved in illicit narcotic smuggling, was transiting along a known narco trafficking transit route and carrying narcotics. There were 2 narco terrorists aboard the vessel during the strike, which was conducted in international waters. Both terrorists were killed with no U.S. forces were harmed in this strike, nor were any animals. Narco terrorists intending to bring poison to our shores will find no safe harbor anywhere in our hemisphere. Just as Al-Qaeda waged war on our homeland, these cartels are waging war on our border and our people. There will be no refuge or forgiveness, only justice. Here's the video, now unclassified and released for public consumption. And I warn you, this is, in essence, another narco-terrorist snuff film, direct from the White House. So, any moment now. And there goes another boat with outboard motors at sea. I don't believe any survivors with this one. That brings the total number of people now, I believe, who have been killed in these strikes to some, like I'm seeing 24, but I've also seen numbers approaching like 29 or 30. So I think now we're beginning to lose track of the actual number of people who have been killed by the United States military as part of this anti-narco terrorist operation targeting Venezuela. And the 2 survivors who were taken into custody are being sent back to not Venezuela, but Colombia and Ecuador. So not sure how that worked out, or how that came to be about, but that's the truth too. So they tried to blow up some people. At least 2 of them were from not Venezuela, from other countries. Now, I don't know what the ties are there. I just don't know. This whole thing makes me feel very, very uneasy because this is in many ways just, it's just not proper, as we've been hearing from Rand Paul. Let me see if I can find the clip yesterday from Piers Morgan. I believe it's right here. Yeah, we don't blow boats off the coast of Miami just because of suspicion, he says. So this is what Rand Paul is saying, and I'm kind of I'm on page with him because, well, I have no sympathy for drug dealers or people transporting huge amounts of illicit narcotics to the United States, some of which may actually end up in Canada. No issues at all with, stopping the flow of drugs. It's how you do it. You need to do things properly in order to make sure that people's rights aren't violated, that even just the reputation, the perception that people have of the United States around the world, and Canada too, for that matter, any country, is maintained. It's important. You got to do things ethically, morally.
We have dangerous people in a lot of American cities, but we just don't go in and shoot them. I mean, we have trials, they get legal representation. And even on the high seas, it's been that way for generations. If you go off the coast of Miami, the Coast Guard will be stopping boats today. And about 25% of the boats that they stop, that they're suspicious of drugs, there won't be any drugs on board. So 25% of the time, the suspicion is wrong. And that's why we don't shoot and just blow up boats off of Miami, but neither should we be blowing them up off the coast of Venezuela. Number one.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Hang on. I need to bring this back up. The clip wasn't over with yet. Because he makes points that I made.
all likely
weeks
going
ago.
to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the
Let's bring it
is
back
wrong.
here.
And that's why we don't shoot and just blow up boats off of Miami, but neither should we be blowing them up off the coast of Venezuela. Number one, there is no fentanyl made in Venezuela. Not just a little bit, there's none being made in Venezuela. These are outboard boats that, in order for them to get to Miami, would have to stop and refuel 20 times. They're in all likely going to Trinidad and Tobago, which is an island right off of the coast of Venezuela. So there's a lot of reasons to be worried about this. But number one is the broader principle of when can you kill people indiscriminately? When you're at war. That's why when we declare war, it's supposed to be done by Congress. It's supposed to be thoughtful. It's supposed to be debated. And we're not supposed to do it willy-nilly. And then when you have war, you just kill people in the war zone. And even then there are rules of engagement. But interdicting drugs has always been a criminal activity and a criminal anti-crime sort of activity where we don't just summarily execute people. We actually present evidence and convict them.
Yeah. Because people have rights. Even, you know, they're human beings. And if you're going to uphold the principles of democracy, individual rights and freedoms, then you have to do things right. You just gotta. If you don't, you no longer have the moral high ground. Here's the president interacting with the Secretary General of NATO today at the White House. All of this, of course, coming while Zelensky signs this letter of intent to buy those Gripen jets. Let's pick this up and listen in just for a moment. Here we go.
Pretty soon. But they all have great respect for the leader, and he is the leader. And we've had some very good discussions today, and things are going along pretty well as regarding Ukraine, Russia. We thought it would be a little bit easier. That's turned out to be tougher than the Middle East. The Middle East was supposed to be the tough one, and we've solved that puzzle, but this one will get solved also. So I want to just say it's an honor to have you, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for hosting again. And we were texting, I think it was on the day when you were in Israel and in Egypt, this tremendous success you had under your leadership, bringing peace to the Middle East.
Thank you.
And then we texted each other and said, and the next big thing has to be Ukraine, Russia. And I want to help, NATO wants to help, my colleagues want to help to basically deliver on your vision of peace in Ukraine. And I really want to thank you for everything you're doing, including breaking the deadlock with Putin, starting the dialogue in February when you came in as president in January, but also for everything you did with NATO, the fact that we are now at this 5%, the huge success in The Hague at the NATO summit, the fact that Europeans are also stepping up when it comes to Ukraine, basically the weapons from the US being delivered to Ukraine, paid for by allies, and the Europeans coming together to discuss how can we sustain Ukraine post the peace deal. All of this is evidence of your leadership of pushing the Europeans and the Canadians to do more, to deliver, and to equalize in spending with the US. So on all of this, and today we will talk more on how we can really bring Ukraine to the next phase and get this terrible war, and all the bloodshed ended.
And as you know, we are going to be making a big trip next week. Some of you are going with us. We'll be going to Malaysia, South Korea, and Japan. In South Korea, I'll be meeting with President Xi of China. We'll have a pretty long meeting scheduled. We can work out a lot of our questions and our doubts and our tremendous assets together. So we look forward to that. I think something will work out. We have a very good relationship, but that'll be a big one. We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. But we'll do it in the future. But next week we'll be with many of you in those locations that I told you. Then it's back to Washington. So thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, can you tell us a little bit about why you're elevating sanctions against Russia right now?
I just felt it was time. We've waited a long time. I thought that we'd go long before the Middle East. And Mark, as you know, we did the Middle East plus 7. So we did 7 different wars from Pakistan and India to so many,
Azerbaijan, Armenia.
which they said was impossible to do. All these wars I did, and the one that we have one left. It'll be 9. We have one left, and I think we'll get that done too. I think we're on our way to getting it done.
We have to.
Please.
Mr. President, do you have a timeline for when you think the story is going to be over because of your leadership?
No, I don't have a timeline. You can't have in war. It's hard to have a timeline. You know, so many things happen in war. Go ahead.
What about Tomahawk missiles? Putin is definitely
Well,
afraid
the
of
problem with the Tomahawk that a lot of people don't know, it'll take a minimum of 6 months, usually a year, to learn how to use them. They're highly complex.
Okay.
So the only way a Tomahawk is going to be shot is if we shot it, and we're not going to do that.
And we've already heard that clip, and we are sort of repeating ourselves here. So we're going to pivot back over here and talk about the economy again, just a little bit, because today Amazon, story emerging that they intend to replace over 500,000 people, employees, with robots. Sign of the times, very disruptive technology. They're aiming to replace like 600,000 jobs across the United States with the robots. Warehouse automation is going to enable the e-commerce giant to avoid hiring over 600,000 people in the coming years. That's what the Amazon board of directors has been told, according to a story coming out of the New York Times. And all this happening, even though Amazon is predicting they're going to sell double the number of products that they're currently selling by 2033. So the company's going to continue to grow, but through automation, through the use of robots, and no doubt AI, they will turn their company into a more efficient operation by getting rid of human beings, or avoiding at least hiring more, 600,000 more. The shift from human to robot is expected to unfold over the coming years. And 160,000 U.S. workers will not be hired, according to the reports tonight by Amazon, by 2027. So over the next 2 years alone, actually a year and a half. So that'll save Amazon about 30 cents on every item it ships. And then the report also says that Amazon's robotics team is looking to automate 75% of operations. These are coming, all this information coming from leaked documents. This is the future. This is why, as well, I think here in Canada, as with every other country, we need to look to the future and understand that these manufacturing facilities will not actually produce the number of jobs that they used to. Auto plants becoming more and more highly automated. Even years ago, you go down the road here, not far from where I sit, there is a factory that produces airbags for cars. I've been through that facility. There are very few human beings in there. It is almost entirely automated. And as time marches on, technology becomes more sophisticated. We see more AI, more robotics. You're going to see even fewer and fewer human beings in factories, maybe to the point where they become almost 100% automated. So all those jobs, those high-paying union jobs, have gone past their best before date, I think. So even if these plants do go to the States, it won't be so much that we lose jobs, but you will lose tax revenue. And I think that is one of the main reasons Trump is so focused on bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., because it isn't about the jobs. It's just about bringing that productive capacity back into the United States, and then they can tax the companies for the production and still extract revenue for their government budgets every year, and then they can use that to fund social programs, maybe even programs where they have to put a lot of people on welfare or free handouts because they won't have enough jobs to go around. That being said, history has shown over time consistently that as technology evolves and some jobs are lost, maybe even a lot of jobs through major disruptions in the economy and technological change, usually the technology creates new opportunities and new kinds of jobs, and people do over time adapt. But that doesn't mean we won't experience major pain during the period of transition as people adapt and retrain, reorient, and reinvest and lose what they have to then have to turn around and find new ways to reinvent themselves and recover financially. So there will be casualties, but there will also be winners over time. But as we heard from the Prime Minister's speech, like it or not, the past is in the past, and I'm paraphrasing, and we have to look forward to the future because what was the phrase that he used? Very well chosen words. His past will not be the future for the next generations. Again, paraphrasing. And very true. Major changes. Not on the horizon there. They're here. It's happening now. Okay, so what else do we have for you tonight? Just scrolling over. I'm going to save this one for last. I'm going to talk about Charlie Kirk and where is he buried? I wanted to talk, I was thinking of talking about the Ostrich story again this evening. Well, before I get to that, because I'm not going to spend much time on it at all. I had a lot to say about it. I'll see how far we go when I start just sharing my thoughts with you about our conversation we had last night here and about what happened over there today. But here's we're talking about war, World War III potentially, and all the disruption around the world. Of course, J.D. Vance over in Israel still trying to salvage, I say salvage, the ceasefire over there in Gaza. He says he's not in Israel to babysit the Gaza ceasefire. Those are his words. Saying that Israel was a partner, not a vassal state today. And we've seen, it's the strangest ceasefire I've ever witnessed. Not that I'm there, but, even through media, you're seeing Israel still dropping bombs in Lebanon and people still being killed in Gaza. And here's J.D. Vance saying, well, I'm not, well, just listen.
It's not easy. I never said it was easy, but what I am is optimistic that the ceasefire is going to hold and that we can actually build a better future in the entire Middle East. But that requires some work. So it's not about monitoring in the sense of, you monitor a toddler. It's about monitoring in the sense that there's a lot of work, a lot of good people who are doing that work, and it's important for the principals and the administration to keep on ensuring that our people are doing what we need them to do, because we want a partnership. We want an ally here. And the president believes very strongly that if Israel, honestly, with our Gulf Arab allies, can play a very positive leadership role in this region, to where, frankly, the United States can care less about the Middle East because our allies in the region are stepping up and taking control and taking ownership of their area of the world.
Okay, so
tonight, some of the first
very, very strange ceasefire, but they're still firing. Not like on the scale that they were, but still conflict, death. They just don't want to talk about it. And I think the media has largely been cooperative on that front because you're seeing some reports about it, but not a lot. So I think they're trying to I think a lot of people want the killing to end. And so even as there have been incidents of violence, bombings even, just not playing it up very much. And I think with people hoping that peace will just take root and grow. Back to the crazy ostrich story. Okay, I just want to say, last night, great conversation. with Phil Primo, who, is politically active online, comments. He's got a following on social media. I just wanted to just make very clear, though, my position on one thing. He indicated or talked about comments he had made in the past, and then he kind of repeated them, saying that he did not threaten Justin Trudeau. And this goes back to a social media post from a long time ago where RCMP showed up at his door because of things he had said about Justin Trudeau. And there was a warning from the RCMP to him at the time, and he was addressing this last night, saying, you don't say things like that because that could get you arrested. And I won't even repeat the words here, but I just want to make very clear. And I said, well, that shows you why you have to be very careful. And I've always said this, be very careful about what you say on social media, because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, even if you don't mean what you're saying, or depending on how you say it, it could be interpreted in a way that might be seen, or someone might interpret it as a threat, especially against a prominent politician like a prime minister. And certainly rhetoric like that or talk like that can get you arrested down in the United States really quick, because they have a very strong laws on things like that with regard to threatening the president. So don't ever do that. Even if you don't mean it, even if you're just joking, don't ever say stuff like that, because it's going to potentially get you into trouble. Not only that, when you talk like that, some people, or maybe not right of mind, might think you're serious about it. So I don't like that kind of talk. I did sort of just push it aside last night. Of course, I don't think Phil was serious about it in that way at all. So I'm just like, don't talk like that. And I just want to make very clear for people out there, because we've seen also some people online posting things, and we've highlighted those things. People even from the Ostrich Farm debate, for whatever reason, posting things where they're saying things they should not be saying, or posting, or texting, or just don't do it. And stay away from things where the situation might get violent or anything like that. Just, I'm against it. And regardless of, what politicians may or may not have done, you don't need to do that. There are ways to deal with it. And Justin Trudeau is no longer the prime minister. Some people, I remember, you think back, and people were saying things like, Trudeau's a dictator, we'll never have another election. And I said, yes, we will. And then we did. Mark Carney, when Trudeau stepped down as leader, and then there was a leadership convention, and Mark Carney became the leader of the Liberal Party, people were saying, oh, he's technically the prime minister, but didn't have a seat in the House of Commons. And so, of course, then the political opportunists out there saying, see, it's not really a democracy, and he's been appointed or anointed, and he's not even elected. But I pointed out, that's part of the process. Things like that can happen. But then there is always a by-election held of some kind in order to allow the sitting leader to get a seat in the House of Commons. And then that happened, even though I saw some of these influencers out there, and then, of course, and other people, because they're hearing other influencers talk like this, saying, it's not a real country, it's not a democracy, and Carney's been appointed. Well, he did finally get into a by-election, and it didn't take long. And many politicians in Canada, leaders, have been in exactly the same position when they've become the leader of a party, but they weren't yet elected to office. And then they have an opportunity, and then they get elected, and then, or not, and then they usually step aside if they can't even get elected in their own riding. But that's not what happened. So Carney, yeah, he was elected in a by-election. Then we got a general election, right? Which people said would never happen, some people, but it did. showing that yes, it is still something of a democracy, because this is all crazy fear mongering. And then the general election came along. And then a lot of these people who are over on the conservative camp, the Conservative Party of Canada camp, actually, in the last election, saying Carney wasn't elected. And what happened during the general election? Who ended up not winning their seat? The leader of the Conservative Party. So then he was the leader of the Conservative Party without a seat. And he didn't step down as leader. So then you had to have a by-election for him. So the shoe was on the other foot. Now, he wasn't the prime minister, but still the leader of the party and still living in the official residence at the taxpayer's expense, in the official residence for the official opposition. Never moved out. While the process unfolded so that there could be a by-election. And Mark Carney, as prime minister, quickly approved that process, allowing a person who was elected for the Conservatives to then step aside. Pierre Poilievre parachuted into a riding out in Alberta. And I'm just saying that the process does work. We don't have dictators in place, regardless of the rhetoric that is out there and the bombastic hyperbole that is designed, frankly, to scare you, to generate an emotional response where you're not thinking straight. And so you mark your X on the ballot for somebody because you're having an emotional breakdown. I'm not voting for the dictator. And worse, listening to people out there who are saying things that maybe they don't even mean, but make you think crazy thoughts to do something maybe that you wouldn't want to really do. Don't do that. Don't talk like that. Don't ever do it. Don't plan to do it. You just don't want to go there. So don't talk like bottom line is I'm against that. And I just want to make that very clear. Nothing against Phil. I understand he's emotional about some of these issues, but it's not wise to talk like that. And so I just want to state that very clearly here. Also, I was going to talk, it's the time is marching on here tonight. So I think maybe I'll save what I was going to say about the ostrich farm, maybe for tomorrow. Because I woke up in the middle of the night when it's quiet. I do more deep thinking. Very scary. I know you smell the rubber burning. My brain. Middle of the night, I wake up and I dream about this stuff. And I didn't sleep much last night because I was thinking about all of this rhetoric we're hearing and what it really means and why what's going on out of that crazy farm is not about the damn ostriches. It's about Canada, the future of the country. It's about our sovereignty. It's about U.S. influence. It's about a choice that was made a long time ago by Canadians to not be Americans, being revisited in many ways today because there is opportunity there to be disruptive, to try to break up the country. And there's foreign influence there from the United States. And I hear it in the rhetoric that's out there. I keep hearing this phrase, we the people. We the people. Because people are confused. Our education system doesn't really educate Canadians adequately, nor do they in the United States. But because we're right next door to the United States, because we are exposed to so much U.S. media and to so much in terms of U.S. politics, people here get very confused. And I keep hearing that phrase, we the people, we the people. That's not a Canadian thing. Here we've embraced more the concept, I'm talking about it. We've embraced the concept of peace, order, and good government. And we did that when the country was formed, even before the country was formed. And certainly in 1867, that's what Sir John A. Macdonald embraced, and Canadians as a whole, because we didn't want to be Americans. Our approach to governing somewhat different. Donald Trump, here I go. I'm on about this, all right? I'll talk about it. Here we go. I can't resist because it drives me a little bit loopy listening to this stuff. This is here it is here. This is the First Nations woman, the second one to go out to the farm. All right. What's her name again? It's Sifico. I found I mentioned this last night. I found her presence there odd from a political view, and just from like the way things have unfolded at that crazy ostrich farm. So Sifico, what I found really odd is I thought, isn't that the woman that showed up when the Pope went out to Alberta to apologize for the residential schools in Canada? And of course, then we got the during the one election, Trudeau lowering all the Canadian flags to half staff as these allegations of mass graves from the residential schools surfaced. And that's controversial. Then at this big event for First Nations peoples, she shows up, the Sifico, and there was this, it was supposed to be, it felt very choreographed to me, but we were told it was sort of impromptu. If you look up the information on it, where she sings to the Pope in a very, very prominent way. Of course, we're talking about, in the end here, what are we talking about? Issues of First Nation sovereignty, land claims, all of these issues, which are escalating in Canada because of UNDRIP politics. And included in that is this 51st state stuff. Anyway, so this woman is from Manitoba. She ends up out in Alberta at the Pope's appearance, takes front center stage at this event, which is broadcast on the major mainstream media outlets, CBC, CTV. Very politically correct, if you want to look at it through that lens, and I do in this particular case. So there she is. And yet it's just very odd because now she shows up out of the farm. We already saw one attempt to deliver a letter involving property rights, land rights from someone claiming to represent First Nations, only to find out that it was fake, that this person didn't really represent any First Nations tribe. Now, Sifico, but what is a week, 2 weeks later, she shows up. And this is what I found very interesting. Just, it really caught my attention when these words came out. Listen carefully to what she said. This was when she delivered the letter just after to the RCMP at the farm, saying that asserting land rights, saying that this is unceded territory, but the First Nations community that she says she represents is going to protect the farm, even though she's also claiming that the land essentially is under the rule of First Nations. So it's unceded territory, and therefore the RCMP and the CFIA supposed to, I guess, give her what she wants, which in this case was a head count of the birds and access to the birds. In any case, she's also challenging the sovereignty of the Canadian government because she's challenging the sovereignty of the king.
All of creation of the land that you claim jurisdiction on, but your king has no jurisdiction here. We took the jurisdiction back from your Queen of England. I told her right to her face, our land, not yours. We the people that were born on these lands, you'll be protected.
We the people. We the people. We the people. That's not a First Nations political concept. That is not a Canadian. It's a concept that Canadians are aware of, but it's not really one that is emphasized or embraced within, well, within the Canadian Constitution. It isn't. You don't find those words in here. It's an American phrase. It's the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. What does it mean? Well, it emphasizes individualistic rights, but also in the Constitution, I mean, they acknowledge that rights actually come from a higher place, God. However, the concept of we the people is in itself emphasizes individual liberty much more so than Canada, where we have emphasized peace, order, and good government. Still, our rights enshrined in the Constitution, not given to us by the government, if you interpret this, I believe, correctly, or the U.S. Constitution, our rights come from a higher place. They are inalienable. That's a word, again, a U.S. term, but the concept's still very much alive here in the Canadian Constitution. They come from God. Whatever God you choose is fine. Even if you don't have a God, the point is that our rights are inalienable. They belong to us as individuals. They are not bestowed upon us by government. The Constitution doesn't give us our rights. The Constitution is supposed to protect our rights. That's what the document is there for. Also, we as a society recognize that in order to protect rights, we need to limit rights. That's also what the Constitution is meant to do. In the United States, though, the concept of individualism, individual rights, or individual liberty is taken to, sometimes by some people, an extreme, and to a place that is nonsensical, especially among the sovereign citizens movement, the common law movement, where, and I've had this conversation in the last 6 months or so with a couple of people, where they believe that the individual is sovereign. Not true. This is the concept that is weaving its way through political discourse in this country, and it is twisting people's minds. They do not fully understand these concepts, and there's a lot of confusion and conflation and meshing and melding of political ideas and these concepts that go back all through history, thousands of years really, developed. Individuals are not sovereign, and I would not want to be a sovereign individual. That is to say, when you are sovereign, that means that you are the sovereign being. There, in our Constitution, if interpreted correctly, I believe, and the U.S. Constitution as well, it isn't even, we have a sovereign, but ultimately, you know who is ultimately sovereign? God. God is sovereign. Now we have a sovereign nation, which is that we rule ourselves. We're independent as a nation. But you don't want an individual to be sovereign, because if you're sovereign, then that means you make up your own laws for yourself. If you're sovereign, you don't have to abide by any other laws, because the laws of the land don't apply to you. That's why you get these crazy common law people going to court saying, your laws don't apply to me. I am a man, a private individual. I didn't sign a contract with you. This is where the concepts come from, and it is nuts. The problem with that concept is that it inevitably leads to conflict and even war and violent actions. Because now I get to do whatever the hell I want. And we as a society, now there's no limits at all on an individual, because I'm sovereign. I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to listen to police. I don't have to listen to anybody. I get to do whatever the hell I want. Donald Trump saying, I could go out into the street and shoot somebody and I'd still have support. People think that kind of language is maybe even accidental. It's not. It's his attitude, because he embraces a lot of these concepts. Unitary executive theory. Maybe you're not familiar with it, but what it really comes down to is we are seeing an expression of unitary executive theory and unitary executive power in the White House right now through Donald Trump, because he has purged the bureaucracy of his political enemies. He has set things up so that now he, in the absence of political opposition, through the Department of Getting Even and others, he's been ruling from day one and taking office again with executive power. A Sharpie, or in my case, a pen, where he just signs executive orders creating laws. He rules by decree. I hereby proclaim that there will be no more DEI anywhere, that there's no debate. You're not going to Congress. I just declare that from this day forward, we will just blow up boats in the middle of the ocean if we feel like it, because we think they might have terrorists, that people we call terrorists will justify it that way. We're just going to blow them up. No trials. No, don't take him into custody. Too much hassle. Just kill him. Just with a stroke of a pen and a phone call. Hey, Pete, bomb that boat. Unitary executive power. He does pretty much whatever he wants, and he's immune to prosecution. We've even seen the courts rule on that. Is if the president is conducting business on behalf of the country, is he immune from prosecution for anything that he might do? And the answer is yeah, which means he can kill people and not have to worry about it. I mean, go that far. He literally can now go out into the street, maybe not right in the middle of America, because people might lynch him if he does this, but because I don't think he has that much immunity, not as much as he thinks, but he can literally kill people in the streets in Venezuela. Not worry about it. Oh, I've decided they're terrorists. Doesn't have to go to Congress, as Rand Paul rightly points out. Normally those things go through a process. You declare war and there's a process to do that. Doesn't worry about it. Doesn't care. Unitary executive power. Yet in Canada, what are you seeing? Poilievre criticizing Trudeau over the SNC-Lavalin scandal, wants the guy thrown in jail, wants the RCMP to investigate further. I mean, there are checks and balances in place here. Whether those things come to fruition or not, there's still criticism, accountability for politicians who don't follow ethics, who don't follow the rules, take gifts. Even small gifts can ruin a political career up here. And don't tell me that Canadian politicians haven't been convicted for crimes, because they have. I've gone through that before. I've given you a list of politicians who have paid legal prices for unethical behavior and corruption. Doesn't happen a lot, but it happens, and it can happen. People accuse our prime ministers of being dictators, and in reality, they come, they go. People don't like them. It takes a little time for the process to unfold. And maybe it takes time to get the Liberals out and get the Conservatives in, or get even a different change of government. Don't forget that the Conservative Party, even in its current form, is not the Conservative Party that it was, say, back in the 1970s. Reform Party came along. A lot of things have changed. Yes, you can change the government in Canada in a very profound and even meaningful way, or maybe even in a destructive way. The Conservative Party is not what it used to be at all. It's totally different, because over time you've seen the influences of the Reform Party, the Canadian Alliance, then back to a form of the Conservative Party as these, Unite the Right movements took place over time, and then the People's Party of Canada forming a populist movement as an extension of what was the conservative movement. So Canada is very fluid in terms of politics and what brand of party you might end up voting for, or the choices you have. And we have a lot of parties out there all the time Christian Heritage Party, the Freedom Party, provincially, it goes on and on. NDP, Social Credit, lots of different brands for people but people tend to vote for the Liberals or the Conservatives. That's always what we had federally, but we have had NDP governments that were elected provincially. Point is, Canada is a more, I guess, fluid, not just a two-party system, although in people's minds, we think that that's the way it is. But the language is very important. And the way that we govern here is different than it is in the United States. And that is really what is front and center out at that crazy ostrich farm. Because that farm is really pushing forward issues not about science. That's almost, it is kind of secondary to all of this. It's tertiary even. This is an anti-government protest. That is what it has become. And when I say anti-government, it's an attempt to really destroy a government agency and challenge the sovereignty and authority of the Canadian government, using lawfare in the same way that people say the government uses lawfare against political opponents sometimes, saying that the process is the punishment. So too, this is the same thing. This is the legal process, the lawfare, creating a delay that is also becoming the punishment for the government, because then they're using a public relations information warfare campaign to highlight this issue where they're not even really truly being honest with people or genuine. And they're spinning a political narrative out there in order to discredit government, undermine confidence in government, to exploit the erosion of trust in government that we've seen since the pandemic, marrying all these issues together in order to get people emotionally engaged and upset to the point where they can't even think straight. So I had a lot of thoughts about this overnight because of what Phil said, because that's an emotional response, the words that he chose. We've seen that over and over again. But violence is never the answer. And then you see Cifico coming out there, First Nations woman. I don't think she even, honestly, I really doubt that she actually represents any tribes in that region. So I don't know that what she did is legitimate. And then today we saw, or actually yesterday, that the CFIA is not going to honor her demand to have access to the birds. And then she's using this phrase, we the people. And that is infecting Canadian politics. And I use the word infect because it is an American virus that is being inserted into the Canadian discourse and political process. And so in that respect, well, she's sitting there saying that she represents First Nations and that they really have sovereign jurisdiction over the land there. I say that even though she may have been born of the land, based on her rhetoric and her use of the phrase, we the people, she's a pretendian in that sense. She may be a real Indian or Indigenous, if you want to call it that, maybe genetically, but politically, she's a pretendian. She's asserting a U.S. concept, intermingling that or combining it with natural law, Indigenous law, or common law, and then handing a letter to a representative of the Canadian government, the RCMP, and the CFIA. And the Canadian government has treaties in place with actual tribes that govern in that area, as far as I know, would then govern land rights and the rights of individuals and our obligations to, of the Canadian government and Canadian communities governed by the Canadian government or provincial governments and municipal governments or regional governments in this case, or district, and the First Nations. who we recognize as being representatives of their community. And I don't think that, honestly, from what I've seen, I'm wondering if she actually does represent anybody legitimately, and maybe not, because the government has said no. Which also brings into question for me, now that's twice, so is this protest even legitimate when they're sitting there issuing these challenges? And then I saw Katie Pisitny from the farm also saying just, I think it was 2 days ago, that they will try anything because they got called out for putting forward this letter from this fake Indian tribe. So they are maybe even pretending. I don't know exactly what the circumstances are, but they did not legitimately represent any tribe. And then she sits there and says, and she got called out on that because, again, there's like a fake thing from the farm. It's not legit. And she's making excuses for it, saying, well, yeah, but we're going to try anything. I see. So it's not about being honest or transparent or truthful. It's just you're going to do anything to win. That doesn't get us to a good place, because if your solution is predicated on a lie, like imagine if the CFIA or the RCMP accepted that letter and then created some sort of a legal precedent, giving them legal merit or authority to a fake Indian group because they make a mistake even. And now it's like, oh, no, you recognized us. And with the First Nations in particular, because of the nature of their history and their laws, and if you don't know, if you don't know what the real history is, it's easy to confuse people. They can just tell you anything. If you really don't know what the history is of the treaties or the agreements between the government and what came through history, then all that history is not really honored, and it becomes bastardized, distorted. And it becomes an insult to First Nations people and to Canadians. It's an assault on freedom itself, because it's an assault on truth. It's a lie. So I don't know what the deal is really with Civico, but something's not right there. And just the fact that she's using those words, we the people, that sends up big red flags for me, because we do see U.S. influence out of that farm. And there she is using a U.S. phrase from the preamble to the U.S. Constitution, which I'm also seeing regularly finding its way into the discourse used by common law people who are also under, constantly assaulting the jurisdiction and even the authenticity or legitimacy of the Canadian government. Canada itself saying that the country is a myth. The fact that they're saying that Canada is a myth, that the country is not really a real country, that's the lie. And there it is, front and center, out at the farm, as you see this fake Indian, pretendian, or at least a fake representative of a First Nations group that they didn't really represent, coming forward and presenting a letter, and it's all fake. It's not true. And it all comes back to this whole concept of who's in charge, who really has the rights to the land. And is Katie Pisitny really saying that she's willing to give up title to her land in order to save her ostriches? Is she really that, I'm sorry, but is she that naive? And that is actually out in BC right now. That is a big issue that is dominating, where the provincial government has actually turned sovereignty over to a First Nations group. And now you have people who own homes, settlers, if you will, right? European settlers or whomever, who own homes, and now the title to their homes, to their land, to their property is now in question, because there are concerns that maybe they don't own their homes anymore because it's been turned over or turned back over to the First Nations tribes there. I've got documents on that, because I think they were having a town hall meeting out there. If it wasn't yesterday, it might even be tonight that it's going on. Anyway, I haven't tuned in on it, but it's a major issue. And because of UNDRIP, this is stuff that's, potentially rolling out across the country. So there's another little weird thing that's going on out at the farm that just doesn't seem to, well, it's certainly not something the average person is even remotely aware of. And because people are so eager to be politically correct or to be understanding and sensitive and not offend anybody, when this kind of stuff is happening, because even out of ignorance, people are like, oh, yes, well, isn't that a great idea to have this First Nations person assert their First Nations rights here and really show the Canadian government that they don't have any jurisdiction, when in reality it's an insult not just to the Canadian government, to the Canadian people, to you as a property owner, but also to the First Nations communities that actually have legitimate treaties with the rest of Canada, because it's all fake. And because what they're really doing is trying to do an end run around things in order to gain power, to gain wealth, even illegitimately, not through negotiation, but through deception and misdirection. It's pretty freaking disgusting, actually, in my view. Now, you take it a step further. The other thing that I see going on out there regularly, it's the choice of words. And this is important. This is also why they don't want to test these birds. They say the birds are being murdered. They say the birds are innocent. They give the names, these birds names, they personify them. In your mind, now they've been elevated to a place where they have rights. These birds have rights. And that it's a crime to kill them or to cull them, even though they may or may not, but they may, or they did, certainly back in December and January, pose an absolute risk to other farms, other farmers who are property owners because they own other birds. And we do see an outbreak right now at another BC farm, even as we speak, where a cull order is being executed, but there are no protesters down there, only the ostriches. So they want you to think of the birds in human terms, saying that they have rights, or at least taking you down that road to make you think that they have rights. Animals do not have rights. Human beings have rights, inalienable rights in our Constitution. There's nothing in this Constitution that says anything about ostriches having rights. What we do to protect animals is we limit human rights. We create laws that say it's illegal to abuse an animal. It's illegal to do certain things to animals that would be inhumane or cruel. So you limit the rights of people. But you don't give rights to the animals themselves in a constitution. So what they're doing out there, by flipping this upside down and saying that the animals have rights, and even animal rights activists, in my view, don't get this right at all, because they talk about animal rights. Animals don't have rights. We limit humans' rights, and anybody that abuses an animal can then be held accountable in court for their actions against the animal, because we have laws governing that, and laws that govern the CFIA as well, and government. And the overreach of the government, that's a whole almost separate discussion here, and a legitimate discussion, because it is controversial. The cull policies, and we can review all of that. That's a whole other thing. But when they're out there at the farm and the protesters are using lawfare to extend things out, they're trying to get you to think and even get some sort of a legal precedent in place where, no, these, you have to test. It's not just about the property rights of the farmers, which, by the way, contrary to what Katie Pisitny and the farm owners out there have been saying, their property rights have been protected through all of this, because they were offered compensation, just the way you would be offered compensation if your property, your home, was expropriated so that they could build a highway through your house. They give you enough money to go buy another house. They were also offering compensation for the birds because they're property. And so their property rights in that sense, not really violated, but the cull procedures still, or the whole policy, still controversial. You can have that conversation. But to say that the birds have rights, that's an insult to you as a human being. That diminishes our rights as human beings because we are people, not animals. We're not an animal. And if we were deemed to be animals, then it might be a whole lot easier to kill us off. Can't let that happen. That was part of the problem with slavery, because slaves were deemed to be property, not full human beings with full rights. Property like cattle, property like poultry, property like livestock, property like a tractor. You can use your slave to do your work. Property like a robot. See? Can't let them do that, but that's what they're doing at the farm. They're trying to assert animal rights as being equal to human rights. That's why, what was it here? I got this thing. This also, the whole Black Lives Matter thing, or the All Lives Matter thing. Well, that's sort of surfaced out there as well. And I'm going to point something out to you here. So first of all, let me show you this one first. If this clip comes up, it does. All right. So once again, here's a post on social media, and this is language that is commonly being used out there, erroneously, but I think intentionally, where we're all being told that these ostriches are being murdered. Right here. Will be held accountable for your actions. You are now associated with helping in murder. Right there in this post. Murder. Well, you don't murder an ostrich. You cull them. You sometimes take them to slaughter so that you can use them for food, but they're an animal. You kill them, maybe inhumanely. You can be held accountable for that, but they're not murdered like a human being. And if they are culled, they're not murdering animals with rights. Can't let them take you down that road, because that diminishes your rights as a human being, because they're putting you on the same level as an animal at that point by putting the animal on the same level as you. And this is an assault on Canada, on our systems, on our government, on our laws. And they're doing it in a way that elevates animals to the same level of rights as you and me as human beings. If they're successful in doing that, it erodes our rights. Okay. So you've got that. Now, here's where I'm going with this, all right? So also out at the farm, they put up a All Life Matters flag. And so in the context of everything else going on, I take real exception to this. Here, I'll show you. This is a version of the post. I think this one has been sort of produced on top, but you're going to see the flag, I think. So I want to show this to you. Can I get the audio up? Here we go.
I wanted to put up this new flag. It says, all living things matter. Let's see if I can get a better shot of it here. All living things matter. And I got this up 3 stories high on the scaffold now, and it's pointed right towards the backfield where all the gentlemen and ladies out there in the CFIA are working, and some of the ostriches. So it says all living things matter. So just a friendly reminder to them every day as they're out there working with these beautiful ostriches, when they're taking care of them, whatever it is they're doing over there right now, that they're reminded that all living things do matter. Just wanted to add a little flag just in case they weren't paying attention. In case
I'm paying attention. Yeah, life matters, but in the context of this, putting it on a flag as a political statement, in the context of everything else I've just talked about, and everything we see going on out there as part of this protest, they're saying that the ostriches are just as important as human beings. They're saying all life is equally important. And you see, under the law, all men or humans, and that's an important distinction to make too. All men are created equal, right? And justice is supposed to be blind, which is to say that the law is supposed to be applied equally without prejudice to all people, all men, all humans. And it's important to make the distinction here that in that language, when you say men, it is all humans. Because there was a time when women didn't have equal rights, when black people didn't have equal rights, when there were slaves. And we've changed that over time. At least the attitude or the interpretation of the language. This risks changing through legal precedent the way the concept of what life is important and how rights are applied. It broadens it in such a way that all living things matter. So if I chop down a tree which is alive, I'm committing an act of murder. And there are people out there who are totally against chopping down trees, tree huggers. If I cut my grass, does that blade of grass which is alive, is it equally important as you are as a human being? If I step on an ant, is that equally important? That's a living thing. Words are important. And when you're out there protesting what they're protesting and the way that they're protesting, an anti-government protest wrapped around an ostrich debate and a call order, these choices in words are not a mistake. When I hear the words "we the people," and I've heard it actually several times out there from different people who are maybe confused, but it certainly is no accident that it's finding its way into the political discourse. Again, it's very disturbing because we're seeing the U.S. influence, either just through organic spread as a virus would spread, or a disease of some kind, if you want to look at it that way. Not to say that the concept of we the people is in itself faulty, but it's not the Canadian way that we address freedom. For us, it's peace, order, and good government. It's a different approach that embraces some of the same concepts, but in a very different way. The reason being, if you are committed to individualism or individual liberty through the concept of making an individual sovereign above all else, then inevitably you're going to have two individuals who come together who view themselves as being sovereign and above the law, and they will clash. And there will be fighting. There will be even potentially violence. That is why you had, in many respects, the U.S. Civil War. That is why, even now, the United States, I believe, is a more violent society, because this concept of individual liberty is sometimes misinterpreted or taken to extremes. And certainly through the sovereign citizen, common law movements, it is misinterpreted, it is distorted, it has become an aberration, a cancer even. And I've said this before, it is a cancer on the system, on our society, because it's created a tumor of conflict and potentially even civil war. Maybe even, is creating conflict right now between Canada and the United States. Again, a conflict that has been there since the creation of the two countries, because it's two competing views of what the world is. And then you see the No Kings rally, which at the core of that is this concept that you don't want a king. And in 1776, they through violent means overthrew the government essentially and created the United States, rejecting the king, which we still have. But I'll tell you this, that concept of a king is also distorted from the US side in the way that they view the king and his role within Canada. Because the king in Canada serves the people. He does not rule over us. People have that completely upside down, especially those who embrace these US concepts, and especially the sovereign citizens and those types. Complete misinterpretation. The reason is they say, well, the Canada is just a corporation owned by, some say the United States or Britain, that we're just a vassal state, if you will, of the UK, and that the king rules over us. We don't really have a legitimate government, that they're all the politicians are puppets of the king and a corrupt elite. It's not true, because this is linguistic deception and gymnastics that they are employing here. They are saying that Canada is just a corporation because the king represents a corporation, like the head of a CEO of a company. In reality, the king is a corporation, or at least the sovereign end of it is a corporation, but it's not a corporation like a Burger King or a General Motors or a company. The king represents a corporate soul, a legal concept that I'm sure very few of you have ever really encountered. A corporate soul is a legal entity, but it is not a business. It represents, or it forms the foundation for a sovereign. The man, the king, in this case, King Charles, serves as the sovereign, as the king. But the sovereign nation, the corporation soul, and I don't mean S-O-U-L, I mean S-O-L-E, singular. It's not a corporation like Burger King, it's a corporation soul. And it's a legal term, you can look it up. As such, its life is infinite. It extends beyond the life of the king. And even the possessions that we all see as the trappings of wealth and power, the crown, the carriage that he rides in the ceremonies, the pomp, the circumstance, the castle that he lives in, the throne itself. Oh, look at all the wealth that this person has. Yes, but he doesn't actually own those things as an individual, as a person. They're not his. They belong to the corporation soul. The corporation is actually the people, the country, our society, the body, the corporation, the collective of our society, the people, and the soul being the singular entity that comprises all of brings the two things together into a corporation soul. But the king doesn't own that stuff. When the king passes away, all of that remains within the legal framework and the ownership of the corporation soul. And that is then held in trust until the heir to the throne takes power to represent the people. But he doesn't rule over the people, and he doesn't own those things. As an individual, he can own, or she, if it's a queen, can own some personal possessions, but doesn't own the crown, doesn't own the throne, doesn't own that carriage. When using those trappings or those symbols of power and sovereignty, they're just performing duties, fulfilling their obligations to the state, to the country, to the people. That's why when King Charles came to Canada to read the throne speech, he didn't come here as a dictator. or an authoritarian. He showed up because he was summoned to do it by the government, the parliamentarians, the members of parliament who represent the people, and he had to come. They asked him to come. They actually demanded that he came. He was called to Canada. We need you to do your job. And that's the truth. So the king shows up to read the throne speech. Oh, but Rick, then he just sits there and dictates to us as he reads the throne speech. Those were not his words. Every word in that throne speech was written for him by the sitting members of parliament, our representatives, elected by us in our election from all the different parties. Sometimes they don't agree. We have a minority situation right now. They fight. They argue in the House of Commons. Sometimes they agree. Sometimes they don't. Doesn't always work perfectly. But the king didn't write those words. The king just read the words of the throne speech, telling us what the intentions of the elected representatives are. As he's a caretaker, a steward of sovereignty. Our sovereignty as a country. And he doesn't write the laws. He doesn't write any laws. He does give royal assent to legislation as a final mechanism, but he's not judging the legislation as to whether he likes it or if he doesn't like the legislation. He looks at the process to protect the system, to protect sovereignty, to protect the country, to protect freedom and democracy. How does he do that? When legislation or a law is, first you start with a bill, then it has to go to debate, presented in the House, first reading, second reading, third reading, then goes to royal assent. It goes through a lengthy process of checks, balances, reviews. And if it makes it that far and it's approved by Parliament, then it goes to the king. And generally speaking, he looks at it and he will say, okay, did it go through all the whole process? Was this done properly? And if so, then he signs off on it, gives it royal assent, and it becomes law. So he's involved in that respect, but he didn't write that law. He's not a dictator. He's not an authoritarian. The prime minister gets one vote. He has a government whip. He can help establish the direction of the government. Of course, he has a lot of power that way, but he still only gets one vote. And he has to have a seat in the House of Commons. He must get elected. He's not a dictator. That's the way the system works. And the corporation's soul is not McDonald's. It's not Burger King. Mark Carney doesn't wear a Burger King crown on his head. The King Charles, not a dictator. It's a much different system. And nobody in Parliament really has the ability, not even the prime minister, to just sit there and write like hundreds of executive orders with a Sharpie and rule by decree. Even though often people in confusion accuse the government of doing that and the prime minister, but they don't. They can't. They certainly can't get away with very much of that. Not in our system. And yet over in the States, that's exactly what you have. Everything is kind of viewed backwards in that regard because you have a sitting president who has really purged a lot of the democracy and political opponents from the system in order to exert in unprecedented ways unitary executive theory. Steve Bannon has talked about this extensively, actually, over time. And they are using unitary executive power to enact things, to get laws done, to get a lot of things done politically very, very, very quickly. That's why you've seen such a rapid fire rolling out of the Trump agenda from the beginning of this administration, Trump 2.0. It's because they're using that unitary executive power where they don't have any checks and balances. He just signs off on this stuff. And when did that become very, very pronounced in a way that really got all of us very concerned and upset? During the pandemic. Operation Warp Speed. What did he do? Executive order. Operation Warp Speed. Throw out all those regulations, all those safety measures when it comes to the development of a vaccine. Get rid of it. Get rid of all those safety protocols. Just get it out there. You can talk about why he might have done that, why he did do it. It's not why he may have done it. He did it. And that was just him. He's the one where all this turmoil centers around. All of the disruption. From that right through to the disruption in the economy, everything. And it's because he's given himself so much power. Can't do that in Canada. Up here, we have to negotiate. We've got First Nations treaties. We've got provincial rights, federal rights. We're constantly negotiating. And then Trump laughs. And the people around him laugh and say, see, you're not a real country. You can't get anything done. You can't build a pipeline. You're not a real country. You don't have the authority. You don't have the sovereignty. You're not even a real sovereign state. These are the criticisms that they level at us. But it's because we respect each other and our approach to governing is different. We believe in peace, order, and good government, not unitary executive power, not a dictatorship. We talk to each other and we go through a lengthy process, and it can be pretty messy because democracy is, and so is freedom. The danger here is when people lie. When they assault the system using lawfare, using, well, just dishonest behavior. When they appeal to you on an emotional level to get you to agree to something like save the ostriches. No, you can't call them, just not, whatever it takes, she said. To just prevent the ostriches from being killed. But you see, there's more at stake there. It's about the system. And not just the CFIA. It's about undermining trust in the government. It's about undermining trust in police. It's about undermining everything. And they're doing it with fear. Fear. Which is what they always accuse the government of doing, try to use fear to control us, right? And yet, if you look at what's been going on at the farm, who's using fear? Is it the CFIA? The CFIA has been pretty much silent. They issued a couple of media releases digitally online through their website, but they don't have anybody out there making public statements. They don't have anybody out there doing PR that I see. I see some people on the left side of the political spectrum chiming in, sometimes with facts, sometimes with exaggeration, but all the real hardcore fear, we have to save the birds or they're going to kill all the animals in the entire province at every farm to starve us to death. We have to save the ostriches because if we don't, we'll lose these precious antibodies. No real science behind that, but we're going to lose all these antibodies, and then they're going to force you to take more injections, and you're all going to die. You have to save the ostriches because if you don't, we're going to lose all the genetic diversity in the animals, and then we'll just be more vulnerable to pandemics and a global depopulation. And that sounds pretty freaking scary. In reality, it's the farm that was involved from the very beginning in selective breeding and weeding out certain genetic traits in favor of only certain other ones. From the very beginning, a genetic research project and selective breeding to get ostriches that grow faster or whatever traits they were looking for and culling the young ones. So they were involved in the opposite of that from the very beginning to get rid of genetic diversity. They don't want diversity. They only want certain traits. They only want the blue-eyed, blonde-haired Aryan ostriches, I guess. That's what was going on out there for years. That's why they want those ones. But save these so that we get the genetic diversity and the other thing is this whole idea that they're going to save these things because of the antibody. It can take generations of development, evolution, if you will, for these antibody traits or the production of such antibodies to be passed on from one generation to another. And I still want to know where the damn babies are. Where are all the damn baby birds? None out there. It's upside down. Everything they're saying out there, upside down. Katie Pasitny lied again today. I won't even play you the clip, but there she is saying, we did everything right. They say that we didn't report it to the CFIA when we had all these birds dying from the bird flu back in December. But no, we did it. We reported it to our vet, they said. She said. And we did everything. No, they didn't. They did not report it to the CFIA at all. The CFIA did not go out to that farm because Katie Pasitny or Karen Esperson or Dave Belinsky or anybody else from that farm, the owners, reported it to the CFIA. That's a lie. And there she is again tonight, lying in her post. This is unacceptable. It's just, there were a number of lies in tonight's post. That one just jumped right out at me again. She just keeps saying it. But if you tell somebody a lie long enough, they believe it. Often enough, over and over again. Just keep repeating it. It's a marketing tactic, propaganda tactic, frequency. Tell it enough, and it just sinks in and people believe it. Oh, no, she did everything right. She reported it to the CFI. No, she got fined. She didn't report it to the CFI. No, they didn't report it at all. They were trying to hide it. Documented. CFIA went out there because they received an anonymous tip, not from the farm. Documented, proven, fact. That's why they got fined. They haven't followed any rules. They talk about government overreach. They've never followed any rules out of that farm. Very few, if any. Given orders to, protect the birds from being exposed to wildlife so they wouldn't get sick, never did a thing. So they got sick. They don't follow the rules. Because they don't believe in rules, I guess. Because they're we the people. They're sovereign. Maybe and a lot of sovereign citizens out there. So your laws don't apply to me, Mr. Canadian government man. Screw you. All life matters equally. Screw you. Your system is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. We don't want your king here. No? Because the king represents the people. Our king is not like a dictator. Our king is not like the king of some banana republic. Our king doesn't hawk watches on the internet. Our king, our prime minister, as far as I know, he's just a politician, by the way. So you never know. But our king doesn't have like a King Charles meme coin. Because our king may be a corporation soul, but he sure as hell doesn't represent a corporation like General Motors, McDonald's, Burger King, or Trump Inc. Trump watches, starting at $500. Theoretically made in the USA, but probably made in China. Oh, you can get the good one for $1,000. Who's really the head of the corporation? Who's really running things like a business? Who's transactional? Who views everything in terms of a deal? Donald J. Trump, who has purged the country of his political enemies, has put military troops on the streets of the United States into cities where that are, governed by political opponents, distances himself from any sort of moral or even legal obligation in defending any kind of freedom anywhere in the world, even though he's supposed to be the leader of the free world, saying, no, not touching that thing in Ukraine at all anymore. We'll sell you weapons, though. We'll just profit from it. I don't find that very distasteful. I don't really want to be doing that. But no, really? Yeah, buy the Gripen instead. Not going to give them tomahawks. This is a game. What do you think him and Putin were really talking about in Alaska? Something's really not right. Meanwhile, he's selling his own version of cryptocurrency, accepting gifts from Qatar, jet worth like $400,000+ US. And everyone in Canada is worried about what Justin Trudeau did when he took a free vacation to the Aga Khan's island or resort, whatever. Justifiably so, rightly so, holding his feet to the fire. Maybe he should do more. But does anybody care about what, how Trump has made, $1 billion since taking office? As he plots to take over Canada as the 51st state. Oh, it's just a joke. Oh, he's just joking. No, he's not joking. Now it's actually, oh, look what's happened. Oh, people out of the Ostrich farm. There's Dr. Oz at RFK Jr. saying, save the ostriches. Oh, let's just be a little bit more disruptive, shall we? They're not right. They had no business sticking their nose in up there. Nor does that billionaire out of New York, John Katzimatidis. Oil baron, shopping center tycoon, New York, media magnate, WABC radio out of New York, beaming their signal back into Canada. Free radio, Katzimatidis. Propaganda? I don't know. Maybe. Things really not right. Look at the trouble, the problems, everything is just gone crazy, gone nuts. You really think it's about the ostriches and saving the ostriches? This whole thing, it's an aberration, a sick, twisted vision coming to fruition through a Sharpie, a signature, not an auto pen, an intentional signature laid down by a unitary executive, one man, unitary power, exerted, expressed through a Sharpie. His power, his way, his people. That's not democracy. And that's not representative of all the people. This is a president who literally posts video of him crapping over half the people he's supposed to represent just because he got upset because of the No Kings rally. So I guess what message does that send? Does that mean that he represents those people? Is he a president of all the people? Is that a democratic president? Is he taking other people's views and needs into consideration? I would say no. In other words, he'll be your president. Maybe you like what he's doing, but it creates a polarized society where through his power, now you can get what you want. But maybe you don't like democracy right now because you feel like you're never going to get another conservative government elected because you just can't get them elected. So screw democracy. I just had a conversation with somebody 3 days ago. I don't believe in democracy anymore. Well, why? Well, because we can't get what we want. Oh, okay. So you want a dictatorship then? Because you can't convince people to go to the polls and vote the way that you want them to vote. So you only want what you want. And then that means that if you're going to get what you want through authoritarianism and a dictatorship of some kind, which are the alternatives to a democracy, then maybe you get what you want, but then you're going to live with your neighbor being oppressed. That's not a free society. If that's what you want, maybe we're going down that road right now. But that leads to conflict. That leads to war. And some people out there talking like that right now. Got to have fairness, respect, accountability. These ideas are so complex that, as they're asserted or put into motion, out at the Ostrich farm, the true intent of the protest itself is cloaked. That's what makes it so insidious. So hard to understand. It's why it led us to the situation where the only explanations, twisted, distorted explanations, for some people just come from now conspiracy theories. Oh, the government is behind it all, and they're going to murder us all. They're going to go kill, after they're done with those ostriches, they're going to kill every other bird and every other cow, and they're coming for your pets. They're going to come for your dog, Rick. No, they're not. That's insane. That's not peace, order, and good government. It's chaos. And who's creating that chaos? It's we the people. It's the we the people. And because of the confusion, you have people out there who are opposed to big pharma, who are opposed to vaccines, sometimes in total, now supporting the farm that has been involved in research that was being used, documented, admitted in court documents, and even on this program where they talked about using the antibodies for further research to create new vaccines, which is fine. If you believe in that and you want that, I believe in personal choice and freedom to make that choice, informed consent. If you want the vaccine, go get it. If you want to develop the vaccine, go do that. Use real science to achieve that, mind you, and do it in a safe way. Don't just, through Operation Warp Speed, get rid of all the regulations and say, just go free for all. We need it right away. Just, I want to be seen as the president that gave, that ended the pandemic. I want credit. I want the Nobel Peace Prize. Can't do that. Undermines trust, puts people's lives in jeopardy when you don't keep safety protocols in place. That's what they've been doing out of the farm. That's what Donald Trump did with Operation Warp Speed. But what we really have here is a clash of two systems. Constitutional monarchy or parliamentary democracy working for peace, order, and good government versus a republic, which some people in Canada keep saying they want, by the way. That's another key phrase, a word that sends up a red flag for me. A republic where with the stroke of a Sharpie, the will of we the people is enacted through unitary executive power, but not all the people, only the people that support the president, only the people who fall into line. Any political opponent, they'll be purged. They'll lose their job. They'll be canceled. That's what's going on. And then the freedom people don't say they don't like that. They didn't like being canceled on social media. They didn't like getting kicked off Facebook or Twitter. They didn't like losing their job. And yet that's what's going on down there right now. It's just Trump's doing it to people. To some degree, it's going on up here too. But not like it's all coming from the U.S. side. And you've got a man down there who says he's the president of peace. He claims there's a ceasefire in Gaza, but there clearly isn't. They're still killing people. And then he's going to be the chair of the peace board, not freeing Palestine. He's claiming control over Palestine and even asserting control, frankly, over Israel. Oh, the Jews, the Israelis, they control Trump. From what I'm seeing, especially of late, he has found a way to hold Netanyahu accountable or to just do what he wants. That's why Gaza is going to be the Riviera of the Middle East. That's why all of his rich buddies from places like Qatar are going to be able to invest in there, rebuild what's been leveled, turn it into a resort, I guess. And they're all going to get rich, rich, rich. And then this is playing out in, Canada in its own way as well. All life does matter, but some life is more valuable. Human life is more valuable than the life of a blade of grass or an insect or a damn ostrich. Because humans, why? We have souls. Not an S-O-L-E, but an S-O-U-L-S. We're not animals, we're humans. We have human rights. And human rights are much more important than the rights of an ant or a blade of grass. To assert otherwise is an insult to all humanity. It's an insult to the country, to all those who fought and died for our freedoms, because it's making a mockery of our country. What they're doing out there is making a mockery of our system. They're mocking you, saying you're no more important than an ostrich, because the ostrich is just as important as you. Same rights. You can't murder an ostrich, they say. Like ostriches, you don't murder. You can eat them. You can eat an ostrich, and you don't go to jail for it. You just go to bed because you're tired, because you're so full, because you ate a 3-course meal. So in reality, what are they proving out there? Well, if you look at it the way that I'm laying this out for you, and this is all true. It's right in front of you if you choose to see it. This is proving that some life is more important than other life. Human life is the most valuable because we have rights. Animals do not. That is why also you cannot look at this the same way as you look at the pandemic. Because the ostriches are livestock. And I don't care if they say they're poultry or not poultry. I know they're ratites. They're still classified as poultry. They want them classified otherwise because, again, they're playing a game of linguistic gymnastics out there to confuse. But they don't have rights. Not like you and I. They don't get a day in court. The farm owners do, though, and they've abused that all the way through here. They're taking it as far as they possibly can, all the way to the Supreme Court. And they are trying to win this in the court of public opinion in order to exert pressure on the Supreme Court to make a decision on an emotional basis and out of fear of the mob, fear of a huge number of people out there who are saying, we want this. Our group of people wants this. Amplifying that voice, putting pressure on the Supreme Court not to make the decision based on the rule of law and legal precedent that has been, in place for generations, laws that were developed over time through a constitution, expressed through a constitution, developed over literally thousands of years, going back to John Locke and all the, Plato, Aristotle, philosophy. Man. Yeah, well, this isn't a 30-second TikTok video tonight. This is much deeper. This is the most important perspective on the whole thing, in my view. Put up that flag. All life matters. That's a lie. Not that all life doesn't matter, but it's not equally important. The statement itself is not clear enough. And that is also intentional. Be careful what you ask for at that farm. You might just get it. Donald Trump's worst nightmare. Love you guys. See you back here tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
I heard old Cosmo howling last night up on the hill where the moon shines so bright. He was singing a tune, lonesome dogs cry about freedom, running If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. Cosmos got them paws that just itch to roam. He's chasing his dreams, he's far from home. With a heart full of love and a spirit so free, he's living his life wild and carefree. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmos on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. Now the night's getting cold, the sky's turning gray. But Cosmo's still out there, he's miles away. He's not looking back, he's got his path to tread. With every step, he's leaving his path. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmos Run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. And maybe one day, when you're feeling alone, you'll find your own freedom and let your spirit go. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a bird. A heart full of love and a spirit so free. He's living his life wild and carefree. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard a bird. Cosmos on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.